McCain is just 4 games into his second career NBA season, but has struggled to carve out a role within the Sixers offense. Could the lack of trust from Nick Nurse and injuries derailing the start of the season lead this to becoming a lost year for the second-year guard? I do want to set the fair context for how he got here this quickly in this season, what fair expectations should be for the Duke product for the remainder of the year, and why I still think there is a place for Jared McCain, even if Nick Nurse is not showing any indication of that at this current point. Now, to dive right into things here, do want to set the stage with just the raw stats for how things have been to this point. Let's not forget that this guy had his season last year finished due to injury, and this year's delayed due to a separate injury, but he is back on the floor. And I do want to reflect a little bit deeper on those injuries in a second, but to lay out the raw stats of what we've seen from Jared McCain. 9 minutes per game thus far with basically empty stats. He has yet to register a point at the NBA level across his 36 minutes of play. 1.0 assists per game, 1.0 foul, a negative 0.1 VORP, so value over replacement player there. A box plus minus of negative 1.9. It is too small of a sample size to be digging into anything directly there, but it certainly has looked a part of uneventful minutes to this point. And to lay out just the raw box scores here, that he obviously was out for the first 6 games of the season before officially being cleared. And then what happened in his debut game, he played 15:09 of game action, shot 0 for 4 from the floor, 0 for 2 from beyond the three-point arc, finished with 0 points, 2 assists and a rebound, also had 2 personal fouls there. Then he did sit out in the second half of a back-to-back the following game, did not play due to a coach's decision in that third game, and then played 8 minutes and 51 of action in his second matchup of the season, 6:48 in his third matchup of the season, and just 5:06 in last night's game against the Clippers. Now, to dive into last night's game against the Clippers directly, this was a situation, once again, where I think there's a clear need for Jared McCain. And I'm not saying that he necessarily deserves these minutes, but I'm saying it's worth allowing him to go through the growing pains. And that's sort of the root of where this entire discussion ultimately sits at. The Nurse was asked about the context of putting Jared McCain or how he thought he looked last night. And the quote that we got from Nick Nurse directly here is he said, quote, "Pretty hard to judge," Nick Nurse said of Jared McCain's 5 minutes. "Didn't love the combination I threw him in there with." Nurse said he considered going to McCain in the second half, but ended up riding Maxey, Edgecombe, and Grimes for much of the rest of the way. Now, ultimately, the Sixers did win that game, and I thought all those guards did their part, looked pretty effective in the role, particularly Edgecombe, who struggled a little bit in the first half, made some big plays down the stretch. So this is not a direct questioning of Nick Nurse's decision-making in that. I just think there has to be a little bit more of a long-term view that currently, at this stage of the game, Tyrese Maxey leading the NBA in minutes still at 40.1 minutes per game there. No other player over 40 minutes there. No other player in the NBA has ended up playing 40 minutes over the length of the season since Monte Ellis in 2011 there. And right in second place for the minutes leader is VJ Edgecombe. With that in mind, I just think there is a place to give him a little bit more rest and allow Jared McCain to soak up those minutes there. Now, to set the stage directly for the Jared McCain injury conversation is he had last season derailed and finished due to a meniscus tear. He ultimately had the repair surgery, not just the removal, which Joel Embiid opted to do in his most recent and traditional meniscus surgeries that he has been forced to get there. And what that means is a longer recovery time, but typically a better outlook for how the ultimate recovery will be. And it did seem to be like things were shaping up for him to be fully available for Game 1 this season until he suffered a torn UCL in his right thumb and his shooting hand there. Now, these are 2 different injuries that both impact the guy quite a bit. For that knee injury specifically, that's a situation where you got to sort of stay off your feet for a large portion of time, that you're not able to keep your fitness up. You have to allow that portion of your body to heal. Now, with the torn UCL, a little bit of a different situation there is that McCain's been pretty open of he's done his part and done everything possible to remain as close to game shape as possible. But the bottom line is that injury was still on his shooting hand. It's not like this guy could go out, get reps, putting up threes, or play any sort of live basketball to that extent. And I think the fact that he did miss out on training camp because of that specific injury, especially with the level of roster turnover with guys like VJ Edgecombe, he still did not have a chance to play with Quentin Grimes as he ultimately was traded to the Sixers following the injury that ended McCain's season last year, that he didn't have a chance to just fit into this offense. And I think we are really feeling the effects of this. Now, one way the Sixers have gone about combating this and trying to catch him up to speed was sending him down to the G League and giving him some reps with the Bluecoats this past weekend. And as far as this goes, I did want to pull up the stats here. For starters, nice to see him actually just playing some stress-free basketball. still did not look particularly excellent from what the, I guess, barrier of expectations is for what he showed last year. In his first game down in Delaware, that he played 20 minutes of action, finished with 10 points, 2 rebounds, had 3 assists there, and struggled as a shooter once again. He was 0 for 5 from beyond the three-point arc, 3 of 11 from the field or overall, and then in game 2, played 20 minutes once again, this time finishing with 15 points, shot 6 of 15 from the field, 1 of 4 from beyond the three-point arc, had 2 assists and 2 rebounds there. I will say it did seem like he was shot hunting a little bit, and I think that's sort of second nature when you are on a hard minutes limit, that he played the first half in each of these games, and that's going to be something that has continued to be scaled up, that I don't expect that minutes limit to go anywhere, and I like that they sent him down to the G League, to be perfectly honest. I understand there's a little bit of a pride hit that comes with it, but the bottom line is this guy just needs game reps. That where the root of this entire issue is Nick Nurse is looking at Jared McCain and saying, this dude can't help us win basketball games right now, that he is not up to NBA speed, that he is not delivering to the level that he was last year, and he's got to find a way to reach that. Now, my pushback and how I feel personally is that Jared McCain, I thought, showed enough last year that there should be a leash, that it is worth going through the growing pains now to allow him to play through his mistakes and eventually catch up to the player that he showed to be last year. I understand Nurse's mindset here, and this has been on across the board on several different decisions here. So he is consistent with it, and I can admire where he's coming from about setting this clear standard and culture of every decision that we are going to make has to do with winning that particular basketball game, that we are installing this identity of fight, of commitment, of never rolling over, and the organization needs that on the back of an absolutely disastrous season. I just think McCain is in a slightly different category, and I do think that this feeds into the same risk-reward, for you do not need to be playing Tyrese Maxey 40.1 minutes per game on an every night basis. This is not an indictment on Tyrese Maxey's talent, not a lack of belief in him as a player. This is purely a situation where I think you have to have the long-term view, for this dude has to find a way to survive the entire season. We cannot afford for injuries to occur to the one star on this team that is consistently on the floor, and shout out to Paul George, who did make his return last night. And for what it's worth, this did seem like it was a one-time thing for Jared McCain having an appearance at the G League, as Nick Nurse was asked about it at Sixers practice today, as I pop back to the wrong screen here. And what Nick Nurse said is, Adam Aronson, shout out to Sixers Adam, tweets, asked Nick Nurse if the Sixers are considering Jared McCain back to the Delaware Bluecoats, and he said, quote, not that I'm aware of, no, not yet, which is an interesting answer on a couple different levels for me. For starters, I just think that you would be very involved in that decision-making process, even if Daryl Morey is having the conversation with you, whatever the case may be, and that not yet, the not that I'm aware of, is a little bit strange way to word it. If you just want to say, nah, we just want to get some reps underneath him, allow him to play through, it was a one-time thing, you can say that. If that is not the case, and it is still up for interpretation or discussion, a bit strange that that is the case to me. Now, the guy that I think is the biggest winner in this is Quentin Grimes right here. Now, there's a really interesting conversation, or I guess storyline to monitor, about what his role and what his price point will be at the conclusion of the season. As obviously last summer was completely derailed in a lot of conversations about what those contractual debates and negotiations were right there. I do think that Quentin Grimes' representation at the time really overshot their landing by trying to get that high price point, $30 million annually floated out there for. To be honest, Quentin Grimes is just never going to be a $30 million player. Now, to give Grimes a little bit of love here and acknowledge what he's doing on the season, that he's been pretty excellent for this Sixers team. He's playing 31.2 minutes per game, averaging 16.8 points per game, 4.3 assists, 3.8 rebounds, shooting 40% from beyond the three-point arc. It hasn't been perfect, that he certainly has his lows that frustrate me, that the way I describe Quentin Grimes basically as a basketball player is he strikes me as the guy that brought a girl with him to watch him play for the first time every single time he's on the court. That it just feels a little bit too sped up, a little bit not quite having a flow, a little bit too scatterbrained out there, but you can't deny the production that he is producing to the table, and they need his skill set there. That I like Quentin Grimes. I want him to be a long-term part of the Sixers team, and he's really making that case. I will also say, I don't think that Jared McCain has necessarily ever struck me as a quote-unquote Nick Nurse guy. And a guy that clearly is a dude like VJ Edgecombe. That does not mean necessarily that these guys just skip the line, like they've each earned it in their individual conversations here. But I don't feel that Nick Nurse has this like loyalty to Jared in a way that I think he probably should based on how last year went. That I don't want it to get lost just how good Jared McCain was last year. That he was the lone source of offense for a stretch of time for this Sixers team. I know it was just 23 games. I know it was a limited sample size, but I do not believe that my eyes did deceive me for the off-ball motion that he showed, the willingness to commit, to create looks for himself without having the ball in his hands, some really unique and advanced skills that you do not typically see for a rookie. I could not be more thrilled with what I saw from him in that brief stretch of time, and I want him to find that version of himself again. So we'll see how this unfolds, but my honest fear right now is that there's not going to be a pathway to these two sort of theologies intersecting here. That I think Nick Nurse is going to have his heels dug in on until Jared McCain can step up and prove that he's ready to impact winning right now in the short term. I'm not injecting him into the starting lineup, or I'm not injecting him into the regular rotation. And until Jared McCain can get the rust kicked off him, which is not going to happen when he's playing 5 minutes a game, if that right now, I don't know how that ultimately resolves itself. So this is kind of shaping up into a different situation than I expect to be the case there. I will once again just resolve with the message of, I agree that Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe should be leading this team in minutes overall. They absolutely should be playing high minutes every night. It doesn't have to be top 2 minutes in the league high minutes. If you can give Jared McCain 12 minutes a game and just allow him to begin to work through these issues here, I think it benefits everyone on the team in the short term and long term, but we'll see if Nick Nurse ultimately does subscribe to that theory overall. So we'll see what happens right now, but I'm certainly a bit more panicked about Jared McCain than I expected to be at this stage of the season. Nothing in the long term that has changed the way that I view him. I still fully expect this guy to have an excellent NBA career and be a huge part of this entire roster and organization for a long time coming here, but I do think that this season is trending down the pathway of being a bit of a lost year for the guy, which I don't love that is the case in its entirety. But let me know what you guys think in the comments there. Are you seeing things the same way as me? And who do you put more at fault for this situation? Is this directly a Nick Nurse conversation that he just has to put things to the side and make a little bit of an exception to get this guy back to looking like himself? Am I being too high on Jared McCain and acting like he deserves this in a way that he has not earned yet? Let me know where you guys are at in the comments there. But appreciate you guys tuning in as always. The Sixers continue to win some ball games, buckling up for back-to-backs over their next 4 games there. So it's going to be a lot of action. That seems like the type of situation in which Jared McCain should get some love and get some runway in my mind, but we'll see if Nick Nurse feels the way. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not just yet. Drop a like on this video here. Give me your thoughts below, and I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.